Welcome to the podcast, Ricky.
Oh man, thank you so much for having me. It's an honor to be here with you, Asher, man. It's been a long time, dude.
Yes, sir. To introduce you to the audience, I always like to ask the question, who do you say you are?
Man, that's a good question, man. Um, and oftentimes I would answer this and I would not I leave it so vague as to who I am because at the heart of everything for me internally, it's man, I'm just a husband, a father, a brother, and a friend, willing to I want to see the people around me winning. So willing to jump in and offer that support, offer that hand, be that stable foundation, and really advisor to help them, move forward. Right.
Hmm,
So kind of everything I am, everything that I do is centered around how do I how do I win, but in me winning, how do I help everyone around me win as well?
hmm. I like that.
Yeah.
What I guess what does winning mean to you? Like what does that look like?
Man, I mean, if I go, to the core of it, to the
Hmm.
core of winning, really, man, I have a really strong spiritual, foundation, and winning for me is kind of living to what God has ordained me to be, has purposed me to be, um, in this earth. So helping others see that as well, helping others be operating in that as well, um, is my desire. And at the end of the day, I said I'm a husband, I'm a father, I'm a son, I'm a brother, um, I'm a friend. But my I look at my accountability day in and day out is to God, right? And before I lay my head down, that's who I have to answer to. Like, was today good? And was today good? Meaning, was it good in where I, you know, operated in my gifts? Was it good in where I helped others operate in theirs? Was it good in where I was, showing excellence in what I was doing? And if I don't wake up tomorrow, can I say, or can God say, job well done, right? So that's at the core of where I see winning is. But then that kind of expands into a lot of different areas, right? So um, expands into health, wealth, building, the coin phrase everyone says now, building a legacy. Um, all those different things, kind of play into that, and those are things that kind of weigh on my mind on every day as I measure who I am against.
Gotcha. Well, can you help me understand how you came to be here? Where did you grow up?
Oh yeah. So I grew up in a small town, population between 2,000 4,000 people. It's an area that to this day has no stoplights at
Hmm,
all. It's a small town called Clinton Corners in New York. To give people more of a geographical reference, it is an hour to an hour and a half north of New York City.
Oh,
Yeah,
wow.
So born, my parents, um, they had moved out there, and they were both in the tech field, whether engineering, technologist, technician. They raised myself and my siblings, out in Clinton Corners, and they're still there till today.
Nice. Was that It's funny when I think of New York, I never think too much of like the state of New York or just what's outside of New York City by an hour being that small.
Yeah. Typically, people will say, "Oh man, upstate New York, that's where I'm from." And I'm like, not really, because I'm 6 hours from Syracuse or
Mm,
from Buffalo or from any of those guys that are really upstate. So
gotcha.
yeah, it's a nice pocket, called the Hudson Valley, Dutchess County in particular, and yeah, that's where I was born and raised, man.
Hmm, that's interesting. And with your parents being in tech, like, was that something common with? like in the neighborhood where you grew up or around your friends where their parents also kind of in the same space?
Um, that's a good question, and I never actually even thought about that. Um, so what drew them to that area was IBM, right?
Mm,
IBM, for all that do not know, they were like the Amazons of the 80s and 90s, 70s, 80s and 90s. Um, and that drew them to that area. So of course there are a lot of people there that were affiliated with IBM. But if I look at my friends in particular, they all came from all types of background.
mhm.
Um, but you know, uh, my family, my parents, that was something that they kind of gravitated to in their younger years. Um, and they just, that was it, man. And to this day, my dad is still in it.
Yeah,
My mother, she's retired and transitioned on to another career. But yeah, technology was the foundation for both of them.
very cool. And I'm guessing, is that part of the reason as to why you became an engineer or you kind of went
That
into
is a
that
hundred.
field?
Yeah, that is 100% why. So when you grow up in a household where your parents are bringing home projects from work, um, soldering,
Mm,
naked circuit boards, and right in the living room, and you're up watching TV while they're building them together, and you know, doing a lot of projects around the house and things of that nature. Naturally, you kind of gravitate to that, you know, curiosity as to what they're doing,
mhm,
and then wanting to emulate who they are, naturally you just, oh man, I want to do what they're doing.
mm,
I remember the first time I knew I wanted to do something that involves solving problems. Before I used to just relate it to being an engineer, but now realizing as I've gone through my career, it was just more so be at a point of solving problems.
mm,
Is I had gotten a remote control airplane when I was a kid. Now, for those that may hear that, it wasn't the what you see today,
yeah,
where it's free flying. What are the what do they have now? The drones and all that kind of stuff. Now, it
right,
wasn't
right,
nowhere
right.
near that level. It was actually a wire attached from the controller to the airplane, and you're walking behind the airplane. Moving it with
Oh,
the
wow.
controller and all that kind of stuff, right?
So
So
it's like a mini motorized kite.
yeah, 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 yeah. But it never left the ground though. It just rolled on the ground. So yeah, I love that toy. And one day I decided to take it apart.
Mm,
I don't know why I decided to take it apart, and I was like, yeah, I like this. But then one of the pieces I kind of flung out of my hand. I don't remember what happened, but it got caught up, on my window
mm.
in the curtains, and I'm sitting there like, I cannot tell my parents that it's up there because they're gonna wonder why I took the toy apart.
Right.
And I need to get that down. How am I gonna get it down? And I remember going through a whole bunch of different solutions in my head, and I figured it out, man. I just felt so proud, like to be able to figure out how am I going to get this thing down from here, and then reassemble it back together as nothing happened.
Yeah,
And that was my first thing I knew. When I like, would look back on my life, I was like, yo, I really enjoy the thrill of being able to solve a problem, right? And get things back on track. So yeah, that's what I'll say to that.
nice. I like that. I remember I think my dad had bought me a toy which was like I think it was like an engine with pistons and everything like that in it. So you get it and
Mm,
you've got to like put together the individual parts. And then once you finally get it running, I think you put the battery in it and you just see the whole thing just kind of go. And
moving.
it's like, wow,
Oh
I
yeah.
built that.
Yeah, yeah. It gives you some type of satisfaction. I mean, not
Yeah.
everybody's into it, but the ones that are and you get exposed to it early,
Mm,
oh man, that's like the best thing.
mm.
Best thing. Yeah.
Very true. Very true. And I'm curious, like having a spiritual background, believing in God, is that something you also grew up with, kind of like having in the household and just being a part of, okay, Sunday we go to church or we do
Yeah.
this routine during the week?
Yeah. Yep. Yep. Man, that was the foundation of everything. You know, I credit my parents for really building that foundation in me. We were in church every week. Went to church on Saturday.
Hmm.
So Friday night sunset to Saturday night sunset, we were in some form of worship or reservation for the Sabbath, right? And it was a blessing, man. It taught me structure. It taught me pause. It taught me reverence in a sense of that, I'm not doing this alone.
Hmm.
And it really just grounded who I was in everything that I've done in life. It kind of set that bar as to, hey, if I want to go, if I want to go in this direction in life, um, kind of this is what supports that, this is what doesn't support it,
Hmm.
right? If you are, but the biggest thing, it was like, we all, and a lot of people talk about it now with, you know tapping into the universe, or God, or whatever their
Yeah.
who they hold as their high power. For me, it's always been, you know God. Like, I mean, from the time, I had a lot of health issues when I was young,
Mm.
particularly with asthma. And I remember I had my asthma attacks, and the thing I remember most is just crying out to God, like, "Yo, God, I need your help. Like,
Mhm.
I need you to really come right now and give me air so that I can breathe." And kind of having that relationship of Him coming in and open up my airways and all those different things, it solidified in me at a young age of, I don't have I don't have if I don't have the strength, that He has the strength for me, right? And that was so important, because, as you know, life throws so many things at you. There's so many um, obstacles, so many challenges. If I did not have that fortitude and that strength, that awareness that I'm not walking alone, that I can tap into His power, His source of strength, then I don't know if I would have ever been able to make it through those points. So yeah, definitely a solid foundation
Gotcha.
in that area, um, and even to today, right? It just
Yeah.
really allows me to see life from a different perspective.
I guess that I like I like your response, and the reason I ask it is because maybe I'm not too familiar with it, but it seems at times that people that are more like, how would you say, intellectually inclined, or kind of in the tech space, where you may be, maybe it's like at times when you start pursuing science, and certain questions that might be certain ways that you viewed the world spiritually may not align with the
Oh
world
yeah,
from a science perspective. So it's like at
absolutely.
times those things either feel like they conflict, and
Yeah,
a
yeah,
majority of people seem to go the science route of being like, okay, I'm going to go with the thing that's makes more sense logically, and not these
yeah,
stories that I grew up with, which are just like, eh. But I
yeah,
was curious because it's like your parents being in tech and then having a strong faith foundation, but then being able to have both of them work together. And then with you having a personal experience and like having asthma and knowing to like call on God and not just be like, okay, well, uh, like, how would you say? Maybe if I was like freshman year, sophomore year of college, I would be like there are times when I'm like, I don't know about this God thing, or someone starts to
yeah,
like kind of poke
yeah.
holes in your beliefs, or they try to like question the logic that you're using to believe in the things
Justify.
that
Yeah,
it's
you're right
almost
on,
like
man.
you're someone of science. How can you believe in God? And
Yeah,
it's it's interesting because I guess what I've found is that, like, especially watching and observing someone look at the Bible from a psychological perspective, it's been interesting to see someone that says, okay, as much as people denigrate religion nowadays, to where of course there have been scandals and just bad experiences that are uh whatever the opposite is that okay, that are
Yeah.
prevalent. I was gonna say
Yeah.
whatever
Yeah.
is
Yeah.
the
Yeah. Yeah.
opposite
Yeah.
of
Yeah.
far
Yeah.
and few between, but
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
it's like despite all of those things, it's like you can have bad actors in church and you can have bad actors outside of church, but being able to at least hear that you had a good experience, or at least you were able to kind of keep two things that you enjoy, being able to problem solve and being able to have a strong faith, or that the structure of this is what we do on this day
Yeah.
is a good thing.
It's, I'm not going to say that I was completely immune to not questioning, my faith. And I truly believe that you can't truly believe something until you question
Mhm.
it. And the way I looked at life was I had to move away from believing in God or my faith through the lens of other people.
Mm.
Um, I can't rely on that,
Yeah.
all right? Because their lenses always change, their perspectives always change. Interpretation from the Bible or whatever you're reading always evolves
Yeah.
as individuals evolve and learn more. And that's the beauty of one proverbs or inspirational words, right? They evolve based off of the situation that you're in, and they speak to you differently.
Mm.
So one thing I had to realize is that I had to really divorce myself from believing because other people believed a certain way.
Mhm.
Um, because me then um, transferring that over to, hey, on the scientific side, then I'll be doing the same thing, right? I'm believing based off of how other people perceive, right?
Right.
And for me, and this is what I really truly believe for everyone. That's why I don't question anyone in their path and their faith and their religion. I don't question it. There was a time where I would kind of push my
Mhm.
agenda on people, but I pull back from that because at the end of the day, it's about experience and like what is your experience leading you to, right? And
Mm.
I can't give you that experience. I can give you an example what my experience is, but that's my experience, right? That's my touch point. That's my connection. That's my thing. So as I'm going through, there's one thing I can never negate: what happened to me. Right? I
Yeah.
don't care what philosophy says here. I don't care what scripture says here. I don't care what this religion says versus that religion. I'm not, I stopped trying to debate those things.
Mm.
But one thing I can't debate is when I'm on the hospital bed and I can't breathe one moment, and then 2 minutes later, my airways are completely open after I'm crying out to my God and saying, God, man, hey man, I really need your help on this. And the
Mm.
doctor's coming back in and saying, look, we don't know what just happened here because we did nothing. There's something we could have done. We don't know how you're breathing the way you're breathing right now. When I see those type of things happen, I'm like, okay, that's my experience. That's what I'm going to keep going to in my experience. When I go through when my kids are born and they're going, it's like a huge traumatic thing, and the way they come to life, and all the doctors and all the nurses looked at me and be like, yo, we don't know what just happened in this room. There has to be someone up there looking out for you. That's another experience I'm checking off for. So it's like,
Yeah.
that's how I build my relationship to where it is. So no matter technology, science, church, religion, all these different things, that's not my reference point anymore. My
Mm.
reference point is what have I seen with my eyes, what experience and how have I been touched in life to fortify my belief, and that's what I'm going to hold on to. And listen, I'll tell you this, people are like, oh, you're right or wrong. If I'm wrong, listen, I'll live with me being wrong, but I do know one thing:
Yeah.
I will never be fake because I'm basing it off of my my experience in my relationship. So that's the only way that I've been able to make it this far in the world that we lived in now, because you'll be doing all sorts of things, right? I mean, there's
Yeah.
and and rightfully so. You're searching, you're looking, you're searching, and like I said, I don't fault any of that stuff. That is what you're supposed to do. Like
Yeah.
you're supposed to, like, have my kids, and I raised them in a way primarily first for that relationship. And my prayer for them is not, they don't I don't transfer over my experiences or my viewpoints. I transfer over, and the prayer of, can help them have an experience
Mm.
that it just locks them into to God, locks them into what he can do for them, and let that carry them. Because
Right.
outside of that, is it's I've seen it over and over so many people's lives, it doesn't work.
That makes sense.
Yeah. Hey,
And
hey, let
yeah.
me say,
Yeah.
can you hear the stuff in the background? I'm gonna make sure I'm not disturbing it. You hear anything in the background?
No,
Okay,
I
perfect,
can't hear
perfect, perfect,
anything.
perfect. No, no, yeah, yeah. The kids are up and they're making some moves and everything. I want to make sure it doesn't interrupt anything. But
Got you.
yeah,
No,
yeah.
you're
I
good.
love the way this is going. I was not expecting to talk about this morning, but man, Asher, man, you have a way of pulling and asking the right questions here.
I'm doing my best to just listen,
Yeah,
and just even for me, um, when you speak about experience, even in doing podcasting or living my life, I've been trying to understand how to have faith, so to speak, and to really just trust God when I pray, and
yeah, yeah,
just be more confident in even speaking to you now in this way, and not try to think about how someone that may be listening later is going to view me or see me. I just want to
yeah,
be fully myself and
yeah,
not
yeah,
hide away the parts of me that made me and
yeah,
built me
yeah,
up, because it's like that's a disservice to me, and I guess ultimately a disservice to God,
yeah,
because
yeah,
like in college I kind of had the experience of going in from freshman year, connecting with one of the guys I went to high school with, and just like seeing him as a really good example of just being someone that's driven and someone that really is carving out a path for themselves, and he encouraged me to do the same. So it's funny that we went to the same church to start, but he never told me like, oh, you have to do this. Or it's like he encouraged me to read like Rich Dad Poor Dad. I didn't
yeah,
read it
yeah, yeah,
until
yeah, yeah, yep,
5 years
yep,
later
yep,
graduating, and then I was felt like I was kicking myself a little bit, but I've learned
yeah.
to kind of make peace with that and be like, hey, it's
We
you,
all done that.
yeah, it's like
I
you.
got that book at the age of 11. I got that book at the age of 11. Ask me when I read it.
When did you
I was
read it?
probably like 35. I was like, you got to be kidding me.
Yeah, but it's funny because what do they say? It's when the student is ready, the teacher will come.
Yeah,
and
yep,
and
yep,
just speaking on experience, that one of the weird things that stood out to me was that, um not dealing with my friend, I was happy in how he was pursuing his journey and how he was motivated. It's just one of the other people that was at the church that was, doing youth ministry, they're really like driven and being like, okay, I'm here to do the will of God. I want to bring souls and save souls. And it's like, I was okay, yeah, that's cool. I grew up being a preacher's kid, and I was like, I see the drive, I see the motivation, I respect it.
yeah,
But
yeah,
one of the things that he said to me that kind of stood out, this is, again, this is not my friend, this is someone else.
yeah, 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 yeah,
um, he said he started making excuses for why he wasn't going to class, saying that he'd rather be serving God rather than be going to class and keeping up with his grades. And it's like, the whole reason why you came to college was to do this. It's like,
exactly. Yeah, you
it,
figure
it
it out.
just it was just kind of off-putting to me. And then just like even the way about which, just the interaction just kind of felt weird. It left a sour taste for me about just going to church, because I was looking at it not to be judgmental, but it's
Yeah.
just like that feeling when people feel like they kind of corner you
Yeah.
and they want you to quote unquote confess. And it's like you're
Yeah.
on the chopping block and like everybody's looking at you. It's like, tell us your deepest, darkest secret. And then we're just
Yeah.
gonna sit here and judge you and look at you and act like, ain't nothing wrong with us. You're a sinner. It's like
Yeah,
you're
yeah,
a
yeah, yeah,
sinner.
yeah,
It's
yeah,
like,
yeah, 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 yeah,
okay, like
yeah,
so this is the game that we're playing. Like
yeah,
you want to entertain people just being gluttonous or just being like not taking care of what they're here to take care of, but you're going to do it all in the name of God. And I was like, something isn't right with that. But for a time, it was like, maybe this God thing isn't right. But then
right.
I changed it into like, maybe just the church. So I went to a different church and it's like, I think eventually by my last year, I started going to like different churches and really um, seeking to understand God for me and not the relationship that my parents had with God, and kind of going to that same thing that you said, like not wanting to focus so much on their experience and validate their knowing God for me knowing God. And that
Yes.
was one of the things that I learned from the first church, which kind of was off-putting. But then when I thought about it, I was like, you make some good points. Although I didn't like how it was said, like there were some good points made. And
Yeah.
I've got to be accountable for what I say I believe. And I can't
Correct.
just point to like, oh well, my parents said. It's like
It
that
doesn't
might have
work.
worked when you were a kid, but like
Yeah.
as you grow up, you've got to be
Yeah.
accountable for your own choices.
Yeah. And you know, as a parent, I have three boys, and being a son, you know, you appreciate what your parents have done for you, and the path that they have put you. I know I do. I extremely appreciate. I wouldn't be here today without their guidance, their wisdom, their understanding, and their love. And you want to. Sometimes you want that to be enough where you're going on that spiritual journey to say, okay, I'll just do what they did,
Mm,
right? Um, but I've gone to the point of where I appreciate what they did so much that, and I looked at the core of what they did, and at the core of what they did was they they went against all odds,
mm,
and they seeked for themselves the path that they wanted to go on, and that's how they created their identity, and they were guided in that way.
mm,
And I was like, well, if that's the case, then the building block, the legacy is learning, growing, being groomed in that, and then finding what's that thing for me? Like what's that thing for me and my family? And if it looks a little different, it's okay, right? It's okay, you
yeah,
know. But I don't move in the. Some people will look at it and be like, "Oh, my parents didn't do this. My parents didn't do this." I'm like, no, the point of parenthood is to set up your children for that next generation, the generation they're not even going to live in fully, right? They're going to be
yeah,
gone at some point, and you got to keep carrying on that mantle. So how do they prepare you for that next thing? And then when you start getting to that point where you take ownership around that, and you take ownership around, hey, this is what formed me today. How do I take that and help form tomorrow, right?
mm,
And just be in a state of gratitude
mm,
for whatever those experiences may have been, good, bad, whatever it may have been,
yeah,
because it's put you in a point today to actually think about, okay, how can I make those changes? Now, that's not everyone's experience. Everyone
mm,
doesn't have the same experience, and I am not naive to that. But for me, and we're talking about me and my experience, that's exactly what I take. Man, I had a beautiful childhood, beautiful upbringing. I wouldn't change anything about it. Uh, and when I say I had to find God for myself, it wasn't saying that my parents weren't promoting that either. It
mm,
was saying that, you can fall into the trap of just rinse and repeat
yeah,
and never have a connection, right? So when you get to those trying times, if and those times where you're being completely challenged, and like you said, I can't say my parents said,
Mhm.
or my parents did it this way, or they're like,
Right.
no, you can't do that. You got to stand on your own 2 feet and be able to be fortified in your belief, whatever that may be, in order to push forward and move forward. So I hope that all makes sense to whoever's listening out there, because it's this is a journey that we're on, and it's part of one of the other things that I do is really just look at life in that way, like it as a journey. On a
Yeah.
journey, you're going to be traveling through different roads, different terrains, different environments, different atmospheres, and while you're doing that on a journey, you're going to be who you are, but you're also going to adapt along the way, right?
Yeah.
If I spend 6 months in the hottest place of Africa, my first couple months is going to be extremely hot because I'm not used to that condition, right? But
Mhm.
if I move into one of the coldest parts of the world, same thing. It's going to be extremely cold for the first few months, but you walk around, you get there, you'll see people wearing shorts, or you're looking at them like, why the heck are they wearing shorts in 40-degree weather, right? Why? Because they've been in that place for long enough for their body to acclimate, adopt to that environment.
Yeah.
And that's just how we go through our lives, man. We're going to have different seasons. We're going to have different things. And all those things are going to be adapting, changing, being molded. You just have to have that foundational thing like, hey, I always lean back, what was my experience?
Yeah.
And as long as I had that, it gave me my true north as I was moving forward.
Mm. I like that. That's a great analogy. And I'm curious, did you have any at the time bad experiences or less than ideal experiences that you can now look back on differently to be able to pull a lesson from it and not just feel like you were victimized?
Oh man, I've had almost every experience in the book. I can come from so many different angles. What angle would you prefer me to come from? I can.
Whichever one comes to mind first.
Whichever comes to mind first. I would talk about the one that kind of set me up on the path that I went on, where uh, I got to a point where, when I was in my younger years, man, the challenge that was put out to me, and my word, I'm using my words
Mhm.
specifically, as a challenge that was put out to me versus the barrier that was put up for me, um, was, hey, you'll never do good at anything in the field of mathematics and science, right? So
Wait,
with that,
where did that come from? Like, especially given your
teacher,
background. Okay.
teacher,
Okay.
yeah, yeah,
Gotcha.
yeah, yep, yep. Teacher is like, no, he will never do anything, and so as a kid being molded, those are some of the things that you see. Excuse me,
Yeah.
that you hear, and you're like, okay, well, maybe it's something else. But I took it more as a challenge, like, oh, this person's not going to tell me what I can be, what I can do. And I went from that point on, I locked in as to, I'm going into this space,
Mm.
right? I'm going to be great in this space because someone told me I could never do something in that space.
Right.
And there were so many challenges along the way in that journey, from your undergraduate years to the rigor of just going through that process as an engineering student, to in your career, where you're trying to grow, and you're facing a lot of obstacles, in a sense of you know people seeing the value that you have,
Mm.
um, people being willing to pour into you, uh, people holding you back and not wanting you to achieve certain things. I remember a time I was studying for an exam, my license exam, and I was using some material. A colleague had some material, and the person that actually owned the material took the material from him so that I couldn't use it
Mm.
to study for the exam. Meanwhile, the guy wasn't using the stuff, right? It wasn't,
Right.
he wasn't using it at all. He just overheard that someone offered, say, "Hey, man, if you want, you could probably use some of this if you like, because no one's using it."
Yeah.
Guy came, grabbed it, brought it into his office,
He
and
give
I
you the
was like,
stink eye and everything while
"Yeah,
he was
yeah."
doing
I
it.
was like, "Oh, okay." But at the same time, on the flip side, another gentleman, uh, His name is Alan Lance. Call him Jake.
Mhm.
Man, he was like, Rick, here you can use my materials, man. Lend me his materials, study from it, brought it back to him, ended up passing the exam. So with every setback, there was always some type of relief,
Yeah.
coming on the other end where someone was helping me. And that's how my journey has been. And I could have sit in there. There's so many other stories,
Mhm.
even in my career and growing and, realizing uh, understanding my value, right?
Yeah.
One thing to try to get people to understand your value, what you can offer, but then I got to that point where I didn't even understand what my value was, and I was taking less and doing less than what I should have been doing.
Mhm.
Um, just going through that process and pushing through that,
Yeah.
and constantly pushing through that. And I still think that there's more levels to me to grow into, to
Mhm.
accept that I am, and keep pushing forward. So I don't know if I answered the question directly, but
You did, and
there's
I
a lot
wanted
of
to
challenges.
go a little bit further on that last point you just made about understanding your value. Like, what was that process like? How did you kind of navigate that? Like understanding that the value
Yeah,
that you have within yourself before even the value that you bring into the room or the value that people see you as on the flip side.
yeah. So that was 2019 or 2020. The whole COVID thing kind of messed me up with years
Mhm.
now, right?
Yeah.
But it was somewhere in there. I want to say 2019. Uh, I sat down with a good friend of mine, Annette Walter, owner of the Timber Industries or I Evolve Consulting,
Mhm.
and we was having a conversation. And I was just laying it all out there. And I was like, I want to be able to do this. I want to be able to do that. I want to be able to do this. I want to be able to do that. I was doing a lot of speaking. I want to be able to do more speaking. I want to do a lot of things, building businesses, all this kind of stuff, and work. I want to grow, and all these different things. And she just looked at me and she said, hearing everything that you want to do, but there's also a hesitation as though you don't feel that you're worthy of the things that you're going after. And for me, growing up in now I'm not gonna put that out there, but
I think
I was
maybe
gonna
you
say I gotta
should.
go there now since I already said it, right?
Maybe
People are
you
like, what are you
should.
talking about, right? So growing up in the church culture, one of the things in the church culture is you're taught to serve, right? You're taught to serve,
Mhm.
serve, 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 not looking for reward. Um, do things you get some type of recognition, some type of token of appreciation.
Yeah.
That's what they call it too, a token of appreciation. I haven't heard that word in so long. Uh, you just keep doing it, right?
Mhm.
And you're just serving, right? So, which is good. I never, resenting that, or I participated into it fully.
Mhm.
But what the problem was when I was looking outside of that structure and I was offering my services, I still had that mindset of give,
Mhm.
give, 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 without requiring that I receive
Yeah.
equal to what I was giving, right? Um, and that right there was a stumbling block for me. Prime example, I would do things, just being very direct with it. I'll do things for a lot cheaper than I should,
Mhm.
right? I'll perform services a lot cheaper than I should because my mind is still locked in on give, 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 not focus on the receive, receive, receive. And people see that, take advantage of it, and you know, you're
Yeah.
left on the back end like, man, I wish I could grow to this. I wish I could do this. I wish and people like you can. You're just not
Yeah.
charging enough,
Right.
right? You can, but you're not thinking that you're offering a huge value. And then you
Yeah.
start getting to that point where you're able to do a lot of these things and they come as second nature to you, and you do it every single week when you're in church. So now when you're doing it for other people, it's like, oh, I can do that for you real quick. It's just something that I do, right? And people are
Yeah.
like, no, everyone doesn't do that. Everyone can't do that. Like, no, you need to really look at the value that you're offering. Uh, excuse me. I don't know what my sinuses are going crazy today,
No, you're
but
fine.
the
Take a minute
value
if you
that
need
that I'm
to.
yeah, the value that I'm offering, and take that and really embrace it. And give me a second. really embrace it.
Mhm.
And when I started to really look at that aspect of it, I started looking at my current career, where it was going. I was like, I'm too good for this, man.
Mm.
Like, I'm too good to be receiving this amount. I'm too good to be just doing these menial tasks. I can be challenged more. I'm looking at my businesses. I'm like, man, we could be charging more for what we're doing because I can do a phenomenal service for people. Uh, all these things started evolving now. My mind started being rewired, like the synapses they talk about. All
Mhm.
the synapses started to be reconnected, and no longer was I in a position of like the humble, oh, just give me what you can, oh,
Yeah.
whatever, I got to no, sorry, it's gonna cost this much because X, Y, and Z, right?
Right.
And being completely comfortable and confident in that. And I would say that that was the biggest thing that I needed was that confidence
Mm.
and and being okay to operate in that confidence.
And would you say that like the building of that confidence started from like that 2019, like pre-COVID or like into COVID, like having to have that conversation with your friend and really evaluate the words that you're speaking versus the actions that you're taking?
100%, 100%. I can't give her enough credit nor enough uh, to thank her for that conversation because, dude, we Asher, we know a lot of the same people.
Mhm.
We've been in a lot of same circles. We know there's powerful people that are also willing to give that same type of advice to us.
Yeah.
Uh, but what thing that was different was this was like I needed to talk to someone that did not know me.
Mhm.
I needed to talk to someone that was completely foreign to who I was, how I operate normally, and just allow me to be completely vulnerable
Yeah.
and allow her to see me for Ricky versus what Ricky has done.
Yeah.
Right. And when I was able to do that and she was able to give me that sound advice, it really freed me, man. I mean, from that point on, I was doing a couple different business ventures. I was like, yeah, I got to stop doing those. Sorry, I can't do those anymore. Why? Because I was doing it to help you,
Mhm.
but not necessarily helping myself, right? So
Mhm.
I got to pull that back,
Right.
and it allowed me to start being more laser focused. From there, I have two successful companies that I operate and I run. Two phenomenal, or more like three phenomenal, four phenomenal, I should say, business
Mhm.
partners included in those two companies. The companies are part of who I am and my identity and what I do,
Mhm.
and that's what I do after my they call quote unquote 9 to 5,
Mhm.
right? So
Right. Right.
but all of them mixed in together, kind of are my identity, are who I am, right? And I'm
Yeah.
fully operating in that and confident in what we're doing, confident in what we're producing, going in areas and platforms and talking to people that I would have never been able to talk to or thought I would be talking to, or developing in things that I would never thought would be able to develop and experiencing things I would never thought I'd experience. All because, I honed in, got focused, understood my value. And I will tell you this, I'm
Mhm.
still not scratching my value. I still have issues with confidence. I still have reservations. And for what I've been able to accomplish to today, even still knowing that there's so much room for me to grow personally,
Mhm.
and I'm just in amazement of this the journey so far, man. And it's just an extreme blessing, I would say,
Yeah.
maybe to
Uh,
experience.
That's amazing to hear. And I guess I'm curious, what was it like one day versus like 1 month or 3 months after you initially decided to say, I can't do that service anymore because it's serving you, it's not serving me.
It was freeing, man. It was freeing. I mean, like, I'm not. It was like a weight that I had put on my shoulder, voluntarily.
Mhm.
I was able to put down and walk away from it, like someone else would pick it up,
Yeah.
and be perfectly okay with knowing someone else would pick it up, because it's like if I don't focus on the things I have to carry,
Mhm.
which are a lot of things I have to carry in life, right? Including my family, my boys, you know, my the organizations that I work with and work for, uh, things I have to carry. Like if I'm
Mhm.
not carrying those well, I have no business carrying anything else, right?
Mhm.
Because that's just gonna drag, that's gonna slow me down, right? It's gonna drag me down, right?
Yeah.
And I fully accepted that, and I tell you, man, I can't see myself going back
Right.
to doing a lot of those things. Like I would, and that was one blessing of COVID for me, where it gave me that point of being able to free myself from a lot of these things as well. And I'm like, "Yo, I can't go back to that. There's no way
Right.
in my right mind and where I am right now that I could ever entertain going back to it. Why? Not because it was bad. And don't get me wrong, listeners out there. I'm not talking about it being bad. There's nothing
Right.
bad
Right.
about it at all. All great stuff. I was only involved in things that were phenomenal, that were great, things that would elevate people, all that kind of stuff. I love it. I love what I was doing.
Mhm.
But realizing that if I don't get focused in and laser focused in, then I would never really truly achieve what
Yeah.
I was born to achieve in life.
Yeah. To your point, it's you really got to be it's better to be honed in and focused in on one thing rather than doing five semi phenomenal things that are like, hey, I'm getting name recognition here. I'm
Yeah, yeah,
I'm getting funding from this, I'm getting that, but it's like you could spread yourself so thin to where now you don't even have time for your family. You don't have time for home, like being at home when
yeah,
you want to be
yeah,
at home versus just like, okay, I'm doing this to reach some kind of status or stature. And then when you kind of look back at yourself, you're like, am I really that person I think I am, or
yeah.
am I becoming something else? And
Exactly. Yeah,
that's an interesting thing. And what's interesting about it is like you speak about the experience where we like everyone went through the pandemic in different ways. Some
yeah,
people had terrible times. Unfortunately, a lot of people were lost. And
yeah, yeah,
but a lot of people also had to do some soul searching and really um I think some people could be in a worse place than where they started, but other people have really had to um bolster themselves up and really
yeah,
address the things that have been avoided. And
yeah,
like I forget who said it, but I'm sure many people have said it. It feels like things that really test you, they reveal either who you are or what you can become.
yeah,
And I guess it's kind of up to you to choose. Like it gives you a chance to be like, okay, you can choose a different circumstance. You don't have to
yeah,
continue to be in a bad place. It's like, although certain things are out of your control, like going within and kind of being able to self evaluate or call on someone else and really be able to like build a relationship or build some kind of trust or just open up a little bit to let yourself know, okay, I can, I don't have to keep doing this if I'm honest with myself. If I really
yeah,
ask this question of like, hey, this is what I want, this is what I would like to have instead of what I have right now, it's like, it's not impossible. I'm not going to pretend to say everybody can do it because it's like it depends on who you are and what you're really going to do that. But like just it just seems like it's a common theme of really having to look in the mirror and kind of
yeah,
reevaluate some things and see what's really working and what's kind of convenient for the time.
yeah, yeah. Man, that was an opener for me. Um, I still battle though with saying no,
Mm.
right? Um, the things that I was involved in, like I said, they weren't bad things. They were things that I love to do, right? I wouldn't have said yes if I didn't have some type of connection to it, right?
Right.
Um, and today I still have to stay grounded into, hey, no, these are the things that I'm gonna focus on. These are the things that I'm gonna see through. These are the things I'm gonna carry through, um, and stay kind of locked in on that. And that's a challenge for me every single
Yeah.
day. Definitely a challenge. So yeah,
Yeah. even something practical for myself that I've had to do in not just getting counseling, but getting counseling with someone that I've come to know over the years has been really practicing giving to myself what I would so quickly give to someone else. And I heard someone say, like, you've got to take care of yourself like you would someone you would care for, because it at times, even when you're not feeling good, it feels so much better. Or
Yeah,
like back to the church example of like,
yeah,
you're it's better to give than to receive. That's a common
yeah, yeah,
saying.
yeah,
But
yeah, yeah.
um back to maybe the greatest commandment, when they say love God with all your heart, mind, soul. There might be something else in there, but it says love your neighbor as yourself.
So,
I
yeah,
think many times, until somebody pointed it out, I was like, once I heard it, I couldn't unhear it. It's like, you can only love your neighbor as yourself if you love yourself.
yourself.
Because it's like, if you don't love yourself, you're just going to, like, you
Yeah,
can
yeah,
inflict pain on someone
yeah, yeah,
else.
yeah,
But
yeah, yeah,
like,
yeah, yeah.
I heard this story of I was when I was in the field this past week, and I was listening to a podcast, and it was someone that's former military. I think he's still in the military, and he gave this analogy about the Greeks or the Romans whenever they would have that, like, I think the Spartans maybe did it in the 300 movie, where they have a wall where they push, they
Yeah, yeah,
strike,
yeah,
they close back, and then they keep pushing.
yeah, yeah, yeah,
He gave this analogy where there's somebody in the back of the line that's called a plunger, and basically their job is to stick anyone that falls, like all the bodies that lay there. Their job is to constantly do that and make sure that all those people that are dangerous, they get stuck.
yeah, 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 yeah,
And
yeah, yeah.
something that he said about that that stuck with me was that that is the most soul draining thing, because it's like, no matter, no despite the fact that they're in the midst of war against the enemy, that's still a life that you're taking. And it's like, unless you can completely disassociate yourself and just be like, oh, I'm just this thing. It's like, there's so much pain in things like war, but there's so much there's so many there's I think I want to say either pain or emotion
Yeah,
between like the interactions you have with other people. When you can have
yeah.
those same interactions with yourself, it's like you learn to value people a lot more when
Yep,
you
yep.
really learn to value yourself, and
Yeah, yeah,
not not playing like a false humility card of just like, oh, I'm going to do something because it feels good. Oh, I'm really
yeah,
going to help
yeah,
this person.
yeah,
And
yeah,
it's like, kind of sitting down and being able to tell the truth and saying, why am I doing this? Like, when you
yeah,
feel those feelings of envy, or like even when resentment starts to come up, it's like, oh, okay, like, I don't like that, but let me
yeah, yeah, yeah,
address why it is that it's presenting itself. And really being honest in that way, it's like you said, it's liberating, where
yeah,
you don't you don't have to you don't have to self-flagellate yourself, so to speak, where you just sit there and whip yourself and just be like, oh, I'm a bad person, I'm a bad person. And that's kind of the mentality that I grew up with, where it's
yeah,
like,
yup,
you
yup, yup,
constantly just punish yourself because
yup,
you're born a
yup,
sinner, you're
yup, yup.
terrible, you're this, you're
Yes,
that. And it's
everything
just
is
like,
based off of that.
okay, it's like, if everything is bad, what what right do you have to just bring good news to the world? Everything's bad. Like, the people that
Yeah,
stand on the
yeah.
college
And
campuses
why
and
would you
just,
and why would you yeah, and why would you want to bring people into that
right. It's like,
bondage? Like,
it's
yeah,
very off-putting when you see people that stand on the street corner and just read from Revelations. Everybody's going to hell. It's like, okay, well, these people seem to be having a good life before you came along. And
yeah,
this
yeah,
isn't
yeah.
necessarily good news, but it's like, you don't see a lot of people trying to win souls, so to speak, from the book of Genesis.
No.
Nobody talks about life before the fall. They just talk about everything's fall, everything's broken. But it's
Yes.
interesting, like getting around yourself, like Eric Thomas, guys from the prayer line, and just really hearing different perspectives and really having that fellowship of men to um, challenge one another, but also just have life from different viewpoints where people have gone through they've just gone through life, like challenges, successes, ups and downs, however you want to define it, but just being open to a different way of thinking and not being attached to someone else's experience has to be my experience. It's like
Yes.
you can
Yes.
hear
Yes.
someone
Yes.
else's experience, but you can also learn to appreciate yourself. And
Yes.
that's something that I've had to learn, spending time away from the prayer line and kind of coming
Yeah.
back and
Yeah.
addressing the things that I'm like, oh, I think I'm becoming envious of this person that I'm listening to. Like I'll listen to guys, and a lot of the guys are married, and they'll celebrate their marriages, or they'll speak on things that they've learned from that. And for so long, maybe been on the line for 5 years, give or take, I've just sat there and
Man.
been like, oh, I want to be a godly man. I want to be a husband. I want to be a that. But it's like in pursuing that so much so, I forgot to be Asher first. I forgot to be a child first. I forgot to be the man that can enjoy his life. It's like
Yeah.
you don't have to be on the opposite of like saint or sinner. Like
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
those
Yeah.
aren't
Yeah. Yeah.
those aren't
Yeah. Yeah.
the only things
Yeah.
to
Those are
like
not the only thing. Yeah.
operate on.
Dude, man, that is a realization that I came across during the pandemic as well. And I'll go more spiritual with it in the sense that, and I'll pull a Bible reference as you were doing when God did made had was God as He was completing the creation process, right? At the
Mhm.
end of each day, He said everything was good, right? Everything was good. Nothing that He made was not good, right? But yet, two beings get punished from eating from something that was good,
Right.
right? The Bible describes it as a tree of good and evil,
Yeah.
right? But God said after every single day, everything He made was good.
Yeah.
So, in the truest definition, that tree was great. That tree was good. That tree was amazing. That tree was everything God wanted it to be. It was good.
Yeah.
But the problem was, it wasn't good for them.
Mhm.
And in life, what I realized is that what's good for someone else is not always meant to be good for me,
Mhm.
right? Someone else's relationship, someone else's job, someone else's the money they're making, the fame they're making. Yeah, that's their path. That's good for them. But that was not good for me. You know, that may not be good for me. Or that food is they can eat that, but guess what? I'm allergic to it.
Yeah.
Right? So there's you gotta realize that life has so many different it's so dynamic. And that's why when I can't stand when people try to put you into a box, a belief box, a um, my goodness, psychological box, all these different boxes. People try to put you in a racial box, a cultural box, all these different
Mhm.
boxes. Like, yo, God is too dynamic, and His world is too dynamic to be put into a box. And guess what? One thing I freed myself from was trying to put people in boxes with me.
Yeah.
Like, oh, no, you got to do it this way, man. You got to da 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 da.
Right. It's
Now,
like, so long as you fit here, I can deal with you. If you're not in this box with me, then I don't know. I
yeah,
don't know who you are.
yeah, I don't know who you are. And it's like realizing, no, dude, I want to experience me from other different boxes. I want to understand what you're doing as my Muslim brother. I want to understand what you're doing as my atheist. I want to understand who you are as an individual. Just because you don't fit in my box
Mhm.
doesn't mean I cannot connect with you. Why? Because we're all living this life together. We're all on this journey together. And my desire is that there's something in my life that you see that you're like, oh wow, man, like, and I can share that with you, right? I can then share that with you. But at the same time, I'm not gonna lie and say that there hasn't been things in some of their lives, and I'm like, man, like I really need to be a little bit more dedicated in certain areas, right?
Yeah.
Because I'm seeing how they're operating. So life is too dynamic to walk that way of where everything I'm doing is right, or I live by these principles that are just only directed towards me,
Mm.
and everyone else got to fit into that shoebox in order for me to see it relatable or that I can live life with them. And it goes to the fact that there are principles in this earth, right? There are principles in this world that the world has been defined by these principles. A religion doesn't own these principles. A party doesn't own these principles. Uh, Different cultures, races, they don't own the principles. The principles are in the earth in which we all live in.
Mm.
So I can't confine them to the box I want them to be in. And then let people and make sure people come into that box in order to experience them. It
Yeah.
doesn't work that way, right? And even God even says, like, hey, you know, it's not about, and there's so many different reference scriptures flowing in my mind, and I just want to say the right one. I don't want to go too deep with it,
Yeah.
but it's like, hey, it's just like it, just because people are not walking with me, like Jesus said one time, the disciples came, oh, there's people out there healing in your name, and I was like, yeah, just because they're not, rolling with us and our crew doesn't mean that they're not doing the right thing. Like they're
Mm.
doing my name, and people hear that, that's cool, that's good, you know, and just being able to accept that on a grander scale, you know, has been something that I had to grow into, still growing into. At the same time, I'm seeing the beauty of growing into that and the relationships, the people, the friends, the influences that I'm making in this world by just being Ricky to the core and letting that shine out without any attachment to or any requirements on
Mhm.
people to be part of who I am and what I do.
Yeah. So well said.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It, and I would say the biggest thing, you're talking about adversity or fighting against that grain, has been one of the biggest challenges because you're fighting within yourself
Mm.
as to changing your mindset, changing your approach to life, and that struggle of, and we know it, right? We know it. Like you just said, you said that balance. You either do it, you're right or you're wrong. Like you're a sinner or you're this or that. You know what I'm saying? And it's like, stop, let it go. You don't define it. Asher doesn't define it. I don't define it. Let the experience define and shape where people are going to go, and that's what you want. And you want to be that positive experience in someone else's life. That's how I look at it now.
Mm.
Let my interaction with you be that positive experience without me trying to force it. Say, hey, I'm that experience.
Right.
But let my interaction with you, when you walk away from me, you walk away with who I try to represent
Yeah.
in
I
your life.
like
So
I like that.
yes,
I like that because um it's really a challenge to be open because that's kind of a theme for me this week because it's like it's one thing to say words, but then when you put your feet to the ground or you interact with someone or a situation comes across your screen, it's like
yeah,
how open are you really? And it's
yeah.
like you can be being open, I don't think means like just go try everything or just be like, oh yeah,
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 we're
yeah,
just
yeah.
doing
That's what
this.
people
Oh
think.
yeah.
Yeah, and
Oh
that's,
yeah. Just oh
oh
yeah,
man,
just go with
I
it. Okay, everything's
dude, I
good.
used to throw out so many disclaimers. Like, yo, I'm not trying to say do all this. I'm not trying to say, like, you got to get it to preface everything. I'm like, yo, I'm tired
Yeah,
of prefaces everything.
right,
I'm not.
right.
And that's me because of where I was in my mind, and those constraints, and the people I'm around are like, oh man, but now you're saying they can do anything.
Right.
I'm like, no, that's not what I'm saying. But like you said, being open, because if you're not open, you can't receive.
Yeah. And
Yep. So
it's funny because even just being open, um in what I'm learning this week, something that I was reminded to do was to be open and unattached, meaning almost like if you're a, I
mm,
guess the analogy I might use is like a fish net where like the net is usually so big where things can pass through there and then it might catch some things, but maybe not a good analogy.
no,
Anyways,
I'm feeling you. Yeah, I'm
got
feeling
you.
you. Yeah,
But
yeah.
I mean, I guess in the sense I wanted to use the fish analogy because it's like, in a sense, maybe it's ironic that I'm using the fish analogy, but in a sense, it's like there are things in my environment that I can latch onto, things that I can be like, okay, yes, I can use this. And then
Yeah, yeah,
even if you catch a fish, so to speak, you can always throw it back. Like you don't have to keep everything that comes your way. Like you don't have to entertain everything that's said. Like a lot of things have happened in the news, and usually anytime that I hear news, it's usually bad news. And
yeah.
so it's like I make it a point not to seek out news. Like
Correct.
I
Yeah,
open my
absolutely.
my work computer, if I go online using like Microsoft Edge or something like that,
Oh yeah, that's a
then
great
it's
way.
like the
Microsoft
first
stuff.
window that pops up is new stuff. So I close out of that or
Change
I'll
that.
open a new tab because I'm like,
Yeah.
I can sit there for 2 seconds and I'm like, I'm curious, but I'm like, I don't care. Like I'm not gonna do anything with that. And it's
Yeah,
not,
yeah, yeah, yeah,
I
yeah.
guess I'm not even going to put a disclaimer to it because I was about to do that again. I was going to
Yeah,
say
yeah. I
it's
know.
not
Yeah,
a,
I know you
it's
were.
not
Yeah,
an
yeah.
arrogance thing, but I was like, I don't need to do that. I'm not here
Nope.
to explain myself to validate what it is that
No.
I'm saying. It's
No.
just
No. No.
sharing an experience, like you said, to let
Yep.
people choose what it is that they want to keep and what it is that they want to let go because it's that you have a choice and it's like really just learning that like at the end of the day whether you do something or not it's still a choice, it's still a decision. Like inaction is still inaction. Like
Yeah.
just not having to have the right answers every single day is something that's liberating. And then like even even just going out of the house to like walk around a town I've never been in like I did yesterday, I was like, okay, that I was like, I, in my head, I was like, I kind of miss this feeling. I always reminisce this trip I took around Lake Michigan over Labor Day weekend for 4 days. I was like, I'm going to go visit these 12 cities around the lake before I leave the Chicago area. And I went and I was excited. And then after a while, I was like, you know, I feel a little bit aimless if I'm just walking through a city and it's like, okay, there's a tourist trap here because everything's on the port, or I'm not here for a specific goal. So I'm going to
Yeah.
walk
Yeah.
the block and just be like, okay, there's shops that are either selling clothes, they're selling food, and there's like the post office. There's the things that make a town a town.
Yeah.
But
Yeah. Yeah.
I
Yeah.
kind of had to remind myself if I'm going just to walk, go and walk. Maybe you're not impressed or maybe you're disappointed, but it's like, hey, my goal was to get out of the house. Like,
Yeah.
it's okay that I'm not happy with not seeing anything, just like, wow. But it's
Yeah.
like,
Yeah. 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 Yeah.
it is a weird thing, an analogy that kind of popped into my head when I was driving there yesterday because it's a town that's like an hour away. And I was thinking to myself, it's like there's a lot of space in between 2 points. And sometimes you can sit and kind of explore what's there, or other times you don't have to worry about filling in the gaps. Sometimes you
Yeah.
just get to where you're going, enjoy what you're going to enjoy, and just kind of do things in the moment. Other times it's like if you really want to explore, you can explore. But
Yeah.
like it's I think why the analogy popped into my head was kind of a reminder of when you choose to do something, don't don't deviate from what you're doing, but
Yeah.
also if what you're doing isn't like what you're doing doesn't is not going to last forever. Like if you say you're going to go here, go there and see what's there. If there's nothing there, just turn around and go back or go home and be okay
Yeah,
with
right.
that. Don't feel
Yeah,
like you wasted your time making a road trip for an hour or 2 hours. It's like it was something. It's
yeah,
like,
yeah, yeah. You just did something. Yeah, yeah,
right.
exactly.
I'm not gonna write about it. I'm not gonna like post about it.
Yeah,
I just
yeah,
did
exactly,
something.
right?
And it's
Yeah,
like
yeah,
I'll
yeah,
share it with you. And it's like, okay, I did that. It kind
yeah.
of helped me, it helped me fill in my day, so to speak. I guess that,
What I'm hearing you saying is that everything that you do doesn't have to have the wow factor
yeah,
that we also often try to seek because we live in a world where with social media it's perceived that there's a whole bunch of wow moments,
yeah,
right?
yeah,
And everyone's living in wow moments. And I say
right.
wow moments, either like everything is happy, everything is great. Oh, I went here, I went there. I'm always with the favorite people that I'm supposed to be with. My
Mhm.
favorite people. I'm always traveling. I'm always eating the right greatest food. I'm always doing this. Every all my experiences, everything I post, everything is amazing, right?
Yeah,
The reality is not. That is not the case, right?
yeah,
And so when we live our lives and we're shaped by what we're beholding. So as we're beholding in social media, that is also shaping our everyday life. Like, oh man, I didn't do nothing today. Man, I'm horrible, man. Like, what am I doing in life? I'm not accomplishing nothing. I didn't even do nothing today. What I'm hearing you saying is that just live,
yeah.
just just just
I mean,
live
so
before. So
yeah,
yeah,
some
yeah,
days it's like that statement might be valid, but it depends on what it is that doing something means. Like if it's just
yeah,
walking outside to the mailbox, it's like it's something. You didn't sit inside all day, but it's like if you sat inside and worked on a project you really wanted to work on, it's
yeah.
something. Whether
Exactly. Yeah,
it
yeah,
hits or it doesn't hit, it's one of those things where even like my relationship with words is something that kind of I'm learning to rediscover from things like the disc assessment or the
yeah, yeah, yeah,
advanced insights, where you see different words that kind of paired together. And a word that kind of came to my mind was mundane, because whenever you get in circles that always speak of like success and like anything you can do, like putting your effort, working hard, and all that stuff, it's like sometimes there's a reason why the word mundane occurs. And like if you're just trying to make a highlight reel, you don't appreciate, like the highlights only come up like whenever you've gone through the mundane things, like the things that are just like every day. And
yeah, yeah, yeah,
you
yeah, yeah, yeah.
kind of have to deal with those things to appreciate when something different happens that's out of the ordinary. It's like, oh,
Yep.
that's different. Like that, didn't see that
Yeah,
coming.
yeah, 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 yeah. No, love it, man. Hey, man, this has been a great conversation. I
Yeah,
really
yeah. I better
appreciate.
get you out of here.
Yeah, I
Let the
appreciate. We could
people,
keep going, man. We could keep going, and
got you, but I've got to be
I think.
respectful of your time.
No, no, I appreciate that, man. I appreciate that, dude. This has always been great, and I would say, I guess, just in leaving, like if you go now, if I go back to the very first question you asked me, who is Ricky? Uh, you know, going back to that same answer, you can see why I answered it in that way. Like, and honestly, I didn't even talk about a lot of things that I do now. Like,
Mhm.
because they're just a product of who I am, right?
Yeah.
And that can change, that could evolve. Um, but one thing that's not going to change is who I am at the core. I'm
Mm.
going to grow. I want to learn more things. I'm going to add more things to my life. But who I am at the core is never going to change. So that's why even when people ask what I do, I'm like, ah, man, well, this is what I do, but it's going to evolve because I'm constantly growing. I'm constantly looking at opportunities. I'm constantly, taking on different things because I just that's what I love to do. But everything that I do right now is, part of my identity, who I am. But the biggest thing is, my faith, my family, my friends, and that's what energizes me.
Mhm.
Uh, that's what keeps me going, and really doing the work that I love, and that right there keeps me going. every single day. So, hey man, I
Gotcha.
appreciate you, man, for having me on the show. I hope I was able to share and hit on some things that
Yeah. I,
were relevant to your audience, man. But this has been a phenomenal time. I really appreciate you.
yeah. I love that you answered my last question without me having to ask it.
Oh, there you go. Love it, love it, love it, love it,
But
love it,
let
man.
people know where they can find you online or offline.
Yeah, yeah. So if you want to find me, you can find me. My biggest place where I'm online is the Success Journey Show podcast on all podcast listening platforms. We're on iHeartRadio, online radio 21.6 the net. We just brought on some other online radio shows as well. So you can find me there, the Success Journey Show .com. That's a website. Also, you can find me on. I'm on it, but I'm not on it as much, and you will never know all the stuff that I do by being on that. But I am on Instagram, Ricky underscore Ventures underscore PE, and you can follow me there as well. So, listen, guys, this has been a privilege, honor. I hope some people reach out to me. I'm open book. Shoot me a message on either going on my website or going to my Instagram, and I will definitely respond. So thank you, Asher. And it's always good seeing you, always good talking to you, and appreciate everything that you're doing.
Likewise. Thank you, Ricky.
Yeah.